So, Liam, before we go live here, tell me about that furry convention you went to.
Uh, wait, wait, what?
Didn't you say you went to a furry convention in the UK? A bunch of British furries?
I did, but that's not supposed to be public knowledge.
I mean, you told me how attracted you were to the pink bunny.
Damn it. Yeah, the pink one was nice, really cute, nice smile.
Great.
And by the way, we're live. Oops.
Oh, oh, we're live. Okay. Well, my
So now we're just,
apologies, Liam. I knew you wanted the furry party thing to be a secret. I didn't mean to broadcast that to everybody on YouTube.
well, it's public knowledge now, isn't it? So anyway, we might as well carry on. Yeah, I mean, what have we got lined up today?
We are going to talk about horror films that feature professional wrestlers. This is going to be a fun one. I handpicked all of these, and I think it's going to be a good one.
It's going to be a nice little debate. There's some which I want to go back and check as well because I've seen some of these. But yeah, it's going to be a nice little discussion. But first, as always, intern, roll the intro. And of course, wherever you are in the world, welcome to another edition of the Magic of Wrestling podcast. I am, of course, the magician, Liam Wakeland.
And I am the effing expert, the American half of this equation. You can call me Mr. Isaacs. I am wearing my Halloween t-shirt today, representing Michael Myers and the Halloween holiday. I am in the spirit, Liam. Are you in the spirit this year?
I'm always in the spirit for Halloween. It's probably my favorite times, obviously, of the year, to be honest. I mean, we always love watching horror films, which we'll obviously get onto in the main event. So, yeah, nice little good time of the year. And I'm excited to see what this year brings.
Yes, very, very excited. And I'm probably going to spend most of the weekend watching horror films too. So, yeah, it's very exciting.
But the question is, are you going to see some of these on the list? Are we going to be watching some of those?
I already have watched a couple of them. I watched two of them. I watched two of them this morning in preparation for the show today.
Interesting. Okay. Of course, it's our little weekly checkup. How you been, man?
Dude, it has been so busy. Had the kids here this week, which is a fantastic time, but of course, it leaves me with a lot of cleanup to do once they leave. But that's just part of the territory, man. Had a good week with them. Long week as always, but I'm happy to sit down here with you and kind of unpack things a little bit and settle in a little bit for the weekend. I think it's going to be a nice, cozy pre-Halloween weekend.
Of course. Yeah, for me, obviously, as always, it's work. We had obviously the big interview, which obviously aired Monday. I had another interview, obviously, with a referee, obviously, on Thursday. So, yeah, constantly recording me, man.
You are the British guy, man. Like you are the British interviewer in the independent wrestling scene over there. I'm excited to see this, man. You got some other things that may be coming up. Who knows? Yeah, I'm excited to see where you're going. You just keep shooting up there, man. You're the guy. I'm telling you.
Can I just stop you there by saying we either get people here? Do you know what I mean? There's more than one person on this actual podcast.
Well, yeah, but you're the British guy here. Like you're the British expert. You're the Billy Robinson aficionado, the world sport guy. Like that's you, man. You're Grado's twin brother. That's you.
I'll take that as a compliment. But yeah, we've obviously got another guest, obviously in the pipeline. I'm obviously in communication with this wrestler, so we just hopefully get a date booked. We're looking obviously at next month, and I do believe you want to be part of this as well.
We'll see, man. I will check my schedule and we'll see what we can do.
Of course, of course. So enough rambling on. Let's get into some why we're actually here. Before we get into our main event, we've got something to get out of the way, which is, of course,
the Magic Weekly.
Now, I've just seen this comment right here, so apparently we've got a first-time watcher.
First time watching the Magic of Wrestling. Found your show from Rennie Takagi, not to be confused with Shingo Takagi. I wonder if that's his sister. But no, I've seen Rennie. She shows up on the After Dark shows. So thank you and welcome to the show.
Of course, of course. So before we also get into some wrestling news, we've got to say thank you to one of our sponsors, which is, of course, FTW Wrestling. Mr. Isaacs, tell them a little bit about it, then we'll hit the little clip.
Brian Idle and Natalia Markova, they run a wrestling school in Florida. They are friends of the channel. $250 a month. You could train from some really good talents that have been working the independent scene for several years. They work in NWA currently. And $250, that's a hell of a deal. Let's go ahead and show them the clip.
Determination, perseverance. These are the qualities that make a champion. Do you have what it takes to be the next wrestling superstar? Are you ready to turn your dreams into a reality? At Fight the World Wrestling's World Wrestling Academy, we can help you become the champion you were meant to be. Our world travel trainers, Brian Idle and Natalia Markova, are well-known industry professionals with years of experience in the world of wrestling. From the basics to advanced techniques, they are dedicated to help give you the tools that you need to succeed in the ring. Our training program is tailored to challenge you, push you to your limits, and help you discover your full potential. Come join our diverse group of talent. Join us at Fight the World Wrestling's World Wrestling Academy and make your dream a reality. Visit our website or contact us to learn more and start your journey to the top today.
Today. Don't delay. Do it today.
There you go. There you go. So, what's been obviously going up in the rest of the news this week? And I think this was last weekend. Impact's obviously announced that they're going back to their old name. I've got to be honest. I kind of like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I'm not sure it's going to be a world-beating game changer, but I do notice it's getting people talking about I guess now TNA again. Well, I think they're going to start at the beginning of the year, but let's be honest, Impact's been floundering for several years. I mean, they've gotten critically good reviews, but they've not gotten viewership at all. And who knows, maybe switching back to the familiar name that was arguably the second biggest name in pro wrestling throughout the 2000s. Maybe that'll give them a little shot in the arm and give them a little extra energy, extra excitement, bring some more eyes back in that are like, this is rebranded TNA. I used to watch TNA back on Spike TV 10 years ago. Maybe I'll give them a shot and watch it again. So who knows? I hope it's successful for them. I hope that definitely brings it up a little bit. I would like to see some more competition out there. I think WWE and AEW need to be kept on their toes a little bit.
No, absolutely. And the thing is, when I read this, obviously I did a bit of research, and it turns out the actual library is still called TNA. And many fans who obviously I've spoke to as well say we never really say Impact, we still say TNA. So I think they're kind of capitalizing it. Obviously, all people, saying obviously TNA. And you just said there, watching it on Spike. That's when I watched it, and the product is really good. I mean, I've seen some of the current day product, and it is really, really good. It's just the fact that we spoke about this many, many times that it's the channel they're on. Do you know what I mean? It's a big downer.
Yeah, they just don't have much exposure anymore, which is unfortunate because, I mean, I was always a big fan of TNA. I was back in the 2000s, in the mid to late 2000s, I preferred TNA over WWE. I mean, I'll just straight up say that now. Like I paid a lot more of attention to TNA back then than I did WWE. It was fresh. It had the 6-sided ring. It was the height of the X division. They still brought in legends that you remember seeing from years past. Booker T, Mick Foley, Nash was there, Sting, Kurt Angle. I mean, I think mid 2000s TNA is just not talked about enough anymore. I think people forget just what a game changer it was. And yeah, I mean, if I don't think they're going to recapture that energy ever again, but if they could at least kind of kindle a little bit of a spark of nostalgia, I think they could only benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned obviously the 6-sided ring there. For me, when they obviously took that out, obviously Hulk Hogan did the actual thing we can get. That's a different debate for another show. But when they obviously took that out, I felt like they lost their identity a bit because not many shows to what I know of uses the 6-side.
Yeah, the 6-sided ring came from AAA in Mexico, which Jeff Jarrett did a lot of business with AAA. And he kind of borrowed that concept from AAA and had the 6-sided ring. It just gave TNA a very unique look. I know the workers didn't like it very much. They thought it was awkward, but it just gave a unique look and feel to TNA matches that just felt different than everybody else.
Yeah, we'll definitely obviously see. Obviously, I do. It is from obviously January that obviously the transition period. So we'll definitely hopefully see because we want the wrestling to be great, and obviously TNA. I don't think they get the love they deserve. Really.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, I'd like to see some more eyes on them. Noob says, let's cheer for Natalia Markova to win the NWA women's tag titles because tonight is NWA Sam Hain. Yeah, I'm always pulling for her. Let's put some gold on her. We could have an effing wrestling representative holding a title in a major promotion. That sounds intriguing.
It does. It does. So obviously, move along. Now there was obviously reports that Tony Khan had a nice little surprise for Sting. Well, this Wednesday on Dynamite, we actually found out who that was, and it was, of course, Ric Flair. Now this has got mixed feelings. I don't know why, but one thing I obviously thought about when obviously Flair came out, I'm thinking, you're talking about a guy who put basically Sting on the map, and we're talking obviously the Clash of the Champions, was it the first one?
Yes. Yeah, the very first Sting Flair match, at least the first that I can recall. I mean, that was like the feud of like the beginning stage of WCW and the end stage of the old NWA Crockett promotion. Sting versus Flair. I mean, that was the feud. That was what carried them over that transitional process into WCW's creation. And there's a reason why Flair versus Sting was the closing match on WCW Monday Nitro, because that was like the match. That was the seminal match that made WCW. And, these two are synonymous with each other. Like when I think about Sting and Sting feuds, the number one thing that pops in my head is Ric Flair.
Mm-hmm.
One. I'm not sure I'd say that about Flair. I might lean a little more towards Dusty, but Flair ran a lot longer than Sting. But yeah, when you think about Sting, Flair is what comes to my mind immediately. And so it was kind of a nice little nostalgia pop for him to come out. I love the promo of Christian.
Yes.
Tearing him down. I thought that was great. But yeah, I mean, it was a good moment. And I'm excited to see. It appears as though reports are indicating Flair is going to stick around for a little while. So I'm kind of curious to see what he does moving forward.
Yeah, and that obviously brings me on to my next question is, do we see Flair playing some sort of role, obviously in Revolution? I'm not talking obviously in a match thing, probably like like a manager type thing.
Yeah, I could see him maybe being in his corner, something like that, or at least being backstage, like part of promos with him, like hyping him up or something. I definitely think Flair, if he does stick around, he's going to have some kind of on-screen character role. It's going to be minimal. It's not going to be anything, too impactful, but I do think he'll be on camera more often. If nothing else in backstage promos, maybe, hyping Sting up. Maybe Sting's going to feel like he can't do it and Flair's going to give him the pep talk. I mean, we've seen stuff like this in the past. I kind of think that's probably what they're going to do with him.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair little assumption. I'm still leaning more towards Darby. I still, in back of my mind, like the idea of Malachi Black, which we discussed on a previous show. But when it comes to storylines, and obviously we know AEW is good on storylines, it's got to be Darby for me.
I think it's got to be Darby too. Yeah, I really do. Sting or Rick, who's your favorite? Personally, I like Sting better. I know Flair's a better wrestler and a better promo, but like I've always been a Sting fan. What about you, Liam?
Oh, I absolutely love Sting. I mean, big guy was in the WCW area. You're talking about a guy for me who's got loyalty through and through. I mean, we know it's well documented. Obviously, WCW were going through so much turmoil, but he stayed there. He was loyal till the exact day they shut, and to me, that goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it can't be understated either. We talked about TNA in the last question. Sting was like the guy in TNA. Like, they kind of built it up around, Jeff Jarrett was a former WCW guy and, kind of got them some notoriety, and Jeff Hardy came in. But it was when they brought Sting in. When they brought Sting in, he was the guy that really brought eyeballs to TNA of casual viewers. Without Sting, I'm not sure TNA would have succeeded. I really don't. So, I mean, he's had a very important, integral part in another promotion aside from WCW.
Yeah, and the thing is, I always I love the Joker sting. I feel like that doesn't get the love it deserves. I kind of
I
thought that was
I was not a fan of it. It was just too much of a rip off of the movie character, and I didn't like it personally. But I know everybody else loves it.
yeah. The only reason I actually like it for me personally is it was something different. Do you know what I mean? Something we've not seen Sting. Obviously, we've seen him the Crow thing or the gold face paint and stuff like that. So I I always like to see a different side of wrestlers. I mean, and obviously Hardy's obviously a prime example. I mean, the Hardy compound thing, that's probably another example. But yeah, with the Sting thing, I kind of enjoyed it. I know some people don't, and I understand that, but I guess it's just one of those things.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of younger fans love Joker Sting because I think that was kind of like their prime Sting, you know, and I get that. You know, he did play the character well, but it was just too much of a rip off of the actual Joker from DC Comics. I didn't care for it. I thought it was just too much of a rip off, but he did a good job with it though.
Yeah, credit to Sting. So we'll obviously move back, obviously, to TNA because apparently another free agent's coming out of TNA, and it is, of course, Heath or Heath Slater. Some people might know it as. I don't know how I feel about this one, to be honest with you. I don't know really what's next for him.
Uh, probably working the indies and then retiring. I mean, I really don't see him going back to WWE at this point. I don't. I don't see him going to AEW either. I just I'm just not sure that he has much to offer right now in terms of like star power or, I mean, he's just, I don't want to sound like I'm trashing the guy. He's entertaining. He's an entertaining guy. He's a decent enough wrestler, but I don't see him going anywhere else, honestly. I mean, I think he might work the independents. Who knows? Maybe he'll end up in NWA or something. But I just don't see him going back to one of the major shows. What about you? What do you think?
I have to agree with that because I think if he goes back to WWE, he's just going to be the jobber he was before he left. For me, I don't see him winning any titles. Plus, now with WWE going through I still like the transition period with the stuff. I don't see him obviously going back. AEW, you probably could, but I feel like I'd get lost in the shuffle because the talent's so stacked. Possibly NWA. I mean, you never these days.
I think the best fit for him at this point would probably be NWA. I mean, in AEW, he would just come in and kind of be like a guy that shows up once every couple of months and jobs to somebody on Dynamite. Like, I don't think they would use him for anything else. They've already got too much talent that's younger and so much better than him that I don't really see what they would do with the guy. And if they didn't bring Matt Cardona in, I don't think they're going to bring Heath in. Because quite frankly, I think Cardona's better than Heath.
Yeah, Cardona's way better. I mean, the Indigo thing seems to work.
What network can I watch NWA on? I would assume YouTube. Like I think right now their shows are housed on YouTube. I mean, they're getting ready to get television deals lined up, but the current moment, to my understanding, you can find them on YouTube.
Yeah, we shall definitely see on that one. So I've got another little thing here now. It's obviously a nice little discussion thing, and I came across it. John Moxley calls for system to spot concussions, protect wrestlers. Moxley was concussed early in the match against Phoenix at AEW Grand Slam last month and recently told the messenger that he felt progressively worse as the match wore on before he eventually realized he should not continue. This is something I have to really agree with because I feel like concussion is probably a big thing, especially in wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, CTE has like been a major thing in the past decade or so. We've had a lot more research on brain injuries. A lot of it speared by a former WWE guy, Christopher Nowinski.
Yep.
who runs a brain science institute. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, where they study brain injuries in sports. Like that's what they do. I mean, this guy's spoken in front of Congress and everything, but he's a former WWE wrestler. He was the runner-up on the first season of Tough Enough, but he's kind of like spearheaded this concussion protocol and concussion research that has brought a lot of attention to, particularly like, the NFL. I got my Miami Dolphins hat on today, and other contact sports and professional wrestling. Like, we've got to be a little more cognizant of the reality of brain injuries. And it's something we really got to watch for. I do think it's kind of odd that Moxley, of all people, is the one talking about this. Mr. Hit Me in the Head with Anything, and I juice in every single match. It's kind of odd that he's the guy coming out and saying, hey, we need to be a little softer on the brains, guys. But I agree with it.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, I've always gone by the mantra is what you can't see makes it a lot worse, because obviously you can't see your brain, obviously, other than scans. So obviously when it comes to the concussion things, yeah, I get the fact that wrestlers need to make that call, but should the referees be like, I want to say train better, but more of aware of this?
Yeah, I mean, there's always room for more awareness of these things, definitely. And I do think wrestling has come a long way, but I think it's taken 2 steps forward and maybe 4 steps back.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is they've taken 2 steps forward and banning things like headshots, direct shots to the head with a chair. But then they've taken a few steps back, but with high spots through tables in every match, including the opener. You got to reel it in a little bit. The work in the ring needs to slow down and be a little more technical and more methodical. And I think that would help a lot too.
Yeah, to be quite honest with you, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Spot on. Not much really more I can say on that one.
So
there you go. You're the expert for a reason, right?
Right.
So I'm going to end obviously this little segment with obviously the final story, which is, for you personally, who would you say is the best commentator throughout the wrestling right now?
Like currently working? I would have thrown Mauro Ranallo in there if he was still active, but since he's not, this is going to be a controversial answer. I don't want you guys to throw vegetables at me or tomatoes or anything. I think Michael Cole's the best right now. I really do. I mean, Excalibur gets a little too excitable and like he can call the moves, but I don't think he's great at telling a story. Shivani is very rusty at doing it. Kevin Kelly's rusty at American television. Like he could get the Japanese down totally fine, but coming back to American wrestling seems to be a little bit of a struggle for him. I think the best storyteller right now who can transition from segment to segment and can keep the show flowing efficiently, hate me for saying it, I think Michael Cole's the best at the moment. I hate to say that because he's not my favorite, but I think he's the best right now.
Okay, the reason I actually asked this is because Road Dogg actually names who he feels is the best, and I will be honest, did you see who it was?
No.
It's not Michael Cole, but I will give you a hint. He is in WWE.
Is it Patrick?
Nope.
I was going to say, surely to God, it's not Patrick. My God. Vic Joseph in NXT, was it him?
Nope.
Well, who's even left?
I'll give you a hint. He's British.
Oh, I only think when I think of commentators, I think of play-by-play guys. Right? So, okay. I don't think of Wade Barrett. Was that who he thought it was?
That is correct.
Yeah. See, when you ask me that question, I always think of the play-by-play guys because they're the ones that do the heavy lifting. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that transition from segment to segment and kind of put over the story. The other guy just kind of responds to what's happening. But that's interesting. That's interesting, Wade Barrett.
That's what
I would be a WWE guy because that's, Road Dogg's one of those, if it's not WWE, it doesn't exist or matter kind of guys. So I knew it'd be somebody from their end.
Yeah, I like Wade Barrett. I like his style. Do I think he's the best for me personally? Not really. The one who I think doesn't get as much love as he gets is Michael McGuinness. I think McGuinness does a good job.
Yeah, he is good. Yeah. If we're talking, well, let's get away from play-by-play guys and let's talk about strictly color guys. Mm-hmm. So you've got Barrett, you've got Graves, you got Nigel, you got Taz. Yeah, I like Nigel. I think he's really good at it. I think it's funny when I think I mentioned this on Dynamite After Dark last week when they showed the devil and he was like, I think this is clear proof that MJF is the devil. It's like he's just trying to advance the bullshit that it's going to be MJF. What
was that impression?
That was Nigel. That was Nigel McGuinness. That's what Nigel McGuinness sounds like to the Southern American man.
Nigel, if you ever see this episode, I am so sorry.
I'm not, pal. Because that's what you sound like. Own it.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably personal preference sometimes. I think, yeah, for me, I'm a big fan of Nigel. I like obviously his work. I still don't. You say obviously Michael Cole. I have to. His voice is kind of good, annoys me. So it's kind of like, not.
Well, who
fan.
do you think's the best play-by-play guy then?
I don't know. I will be honest, because I feel like
Like, the fact that you couldn't think of one person better, like that, yeah. I mean, that's kind of like, to me, it's almost like Michael Cole by default, because I just don't think there's a lot of good play-by-play guys out there right now. Like I said, my favorite was Mauro Ranallo, but pro wrestling treated him like shit. So he went to where he's actually revered and respected in doing boxing and MMA.
yeah, we could obviously put. I'll tell you what. People who's watching this, let us know in the comments who you think is obviously the best commentator. It could be play-by-play, could be color, whatever you want. And then we'll obviously discuss it on the next show. How's that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting discussion to be had, because I just, in my personal opinion, current wrestling commentary leaves a whole lot to be desired for me. I like commentary teams of the past a lot more.
Maybe we could do a whole show on that.
Sure. I mean, we absolutely could. 100%.
Well, we need some show ideas for next month, so maybe we'll put these in the pipeline. But
There
anyway,
we go. There we go.
I mean, enough rambling on. Right, that's obviously got through the news. Shall we get into main event?
Let's do it, buddy.
The main event.
Damn it, I had a quarter to try and do the impression, and I don't know where it's gone.
I don't believe I have a quarter on my desk. I looked and I don't see one.
Okay, so
I'm too broke to have a quarter on my desk.
no comment. But anyway, of course, the main event is brought to you by the Kill City Cup, which is kind of ironic because you can kind of link it into the main event. Do you know what? Let's play the video, shall we?
Welcome to the Kill City Cup. I got the world by the ball.
Yes. Oh dear. How long you had that loaded in? Of course, that is the Kill City Cup, which is obviously one of the proud sponsors of All Life in Wrestling. So if you guys want to check that out, you can check it out by a number of ways. You can go in the description of this video. You can head to their website, Kill City Cup, or you can head to YouTube and type Kill City Cup. You'll find them. It's a great little video, and I would recommend it to anyone. Right, let me breathe. Without further ado, now I will hand you over to the expert for our main event.
All right. So as we discussed at the top of the program here, we are discussing wrestlers in horror films. Now, I'm a huge horror movie fan. Horror is probably my neck and neck with pro wrestling, is like my nerdy fandom of choice. I love horror about as much as I love wrestling, honestly. But so I was very fascinated to kind of pluck these movies out and discuss them. So I'm curious to see your thoughts on some of these. Now, the first one that I have here, and I'll go ahead and show it. This came out in, I think, 2005, and I found the DVD of this in my local Walmart. And I was like, you know, I got to get that. So I've had this on DVD probably for a decade and a half, and it's WrestleManiac. Now, WrestleManiac has Rey Mysterio in it. Now, by looking at that cover, it kind of looks like it would be Rey Mysterio Jr. It's not. It's Rey Mysterio Sr., who is the uncle of Rey Mysterio, the guy who currently wrestles as Rey Mysterio. So this is Rey Mysterio Sr. And this is essentially a slasher film where there is I don't know if he's like an undead or some kind of luchador monster who's like a creature, but he's a luchador who catches his victims and proceeds to rip their face off, akin to ripping a mask off, which is like the ultimate sign of disrespect in lucha libre. Fascinating concept here. I wouldn't say it's a great movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a fascinating concept here. And it did actually have, aside from Rey Mysterio Sr., it had one other person who had a very, very small role in WWE. Do you remember the Diva contest by chance, where they were trying to discover a new diva? This might have been before your time, Liam, but this is like 2003, 2004. Do you remember that?
I vaguely remember it. I don't remember any of the participants. Also, I
Okay.
don't remember some of them, but not them all.
Christy Hemme was the one who eventually won it. So I
Okay,
know
yeah.
you've probably heard of her because she's been involved in Impact over the years. But there was a blonde woman by the name of Layla that was in that competition, and she kind of got a lot of buzz online because a lot of people liked her. She's in this movie.
Okay.
So she has she's one of the main girls in this movie. But yeah, it's a fascinating concept. I want to know, Liam, A, have you seen this or read anything about it? B, what do you think about the concept of a killer luchador ripping people's faces off?
So I've not seen the movie as a whole, but I have seen clips of this movie. And I'm going to be honest, because the first thing I read was the concept, I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Let's see where they go with this. Now, so I did see obviously some clips, and oh my God, some of the things in it are absolutely weird as oh. It's your typical slasher type thing.
Yeah.
And that's all I can say about it. It's just absolutely crazy.
Well, I will tell you, for anybody, and I'm only speaking for viewers in America here. I can't attest to international, but here in the US, you can find WrestleManiac on Tubi, which is like a free streaming service. It's ad supported. You'll get like maybe 2 or 3 commercials during the show, but you can find WrestleManiac for free on Tubi. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. Like I said, I own the DVD of it. It caught my eye when I was in Walmart, and I was like, huh, a horror movie with a luchador. That sounds very interesting. And I'm a sucker for crappy B-list horror films anyways, which we'll get a couple more on the list later. And so I figured I'd give it a shot. So yeah, that's WrestleMania.
There you go. It's just going to get weirder from this, by the way. I'm just going to say that.
Well, some of these are really good. There's a handful of really good ones. There's a couple of not so good ones. So you got to mix in the good with the bad, because otherwise, how fun would it be if these were all just bangers, right?
There you go. You got to mix it up, right?
You got to have like funny, campy ones too. Like you got to break the monotony up. The next one on my list, there was a period of time where after CM Punk left the WWE, he kind of started doing a bunch of other non-wrestling projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
He started being a commentator for Cage Fury Fighting Championship, and he started writing comic books. Like he wrote like some Thor issues, I believe. And he made regular appearances on The Talking Dead, which is like a Walking Dead wrap-up show with Chris Hardwick. You know, he was just doing all these little odd projects. And he did a movie. He did a horror movie. And about 2 or 3 years ago, this movie came out. Girl on the Third Floor. Home is Where Hell Is. Now, this movie, it's a bit of a slow burn. I'm not sure it's for everybody. I've seen bad reviews of it. I've seen some people that liked it. I actually really liked it. I thought it was pretty good. It was kind of a slow burn. This guy buys this old house, wants to move him and his wife and kid in it, but it's like a shithole. So he's got to go in and do repairs on it. So he goes in, starts doing repairs, starts seeing weird little things ooze coming out of holes, black ooze. And, you know, I don't want to reveal too much of the story, but there ends up being a ghost lady that lives up top, and the story gets progressively sicker and weirder from there. Liam, what are your thoughts on Girl on the Third Floor?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it is a slow burner, and some of these type of movies I kind of like, because you're thinking, okay, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And this is a prime example, you know, the movie. And I'm going to be honest, I think Punk did a really, really good job in this. I feel like, because this was the first time I've seen him, obviously, in a movie, and I'm thinking, okay, let's see what he does. And he does really, really good. And you're right, the more you watch this movie, the weirder it gets.
Yeah. Without revealing too much, and some of the subject matter in it is a little risque to talk about on YouTube, in terms of the backstory of said girl that's living on the third floor. But yeah, I'm with you. I thought CM Punk did a really good job here. I thought he acted pretty well in this. And it was kind of cool how towards the end, when you kind of, you know, not throwing out spoilers, but when he starts to get a little more involved with the paranormal, it kind of almost has like an Evil Dead type feel for a few minutes, which I love. I love the Evil Dead franchise. But yeah, I was a fan of this movie, and I liked Punk's performance.
There you go. So this is probably one of those I would, again, recommend go checking it out, because it is definitely a weird one.
It used to be on Netflix. That's where I watched it. I think it's on Prime Video now, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so if you've got Prime Video, go out there and check it out if you haven't seen it. I think it's worth a watch. I like it.
There you go.
This next one on the list, this is an absolute classic. And it's spoiler. Well, not really spoiler, but just a note here. It's been a long time since I've watched this movie, so I got to go back and kind of refresh myself. But this is an all-time classic written by John Carpenter, who also wrote and directed my t-shirt sake movie, Halloween. This is one of his other movies. It was a science fiction / horror film featuring Rowdy Roddy Piper, and it is They Live. Now, They Live is kind of like a dystopian concept of there's like alien type creatures that have like infiltrated governments around the world, and they've become all the influential leaders, the big businessmen, the influential cultural figures, the politicians. They're all like secretly aliens. And Roddy Piper is the guy who figured it out, because he had like some glasses he could put on, and he could see who was an alien and who was a real person. This is a freaky, freaky movie with a lot of overtones to, like, you know, secret elites. In this case, they were aliens, but, you know, secret elites that run the world and are super dangerous. And it's a classic. It's an absolute classic. Liam, what are your thoughts on They Live?
So when you read the concept out there, and I'm just thinking, how stupid does this actually sound? But when you actually watch the movie, it's so good. I mean, when you obviously, because you brought this concept obviously to the table, I'm thinking this was the first movie I thought this has got to be on the list because everyone talks about it, and yeah, it's definitely good. I mean, I've not seen it obviously for a while, so I may need to go back and watch this one.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it too, but I own it. It's an absolute classic. I even heard JFB talking about it last weekend about how much he loved it. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, John Carpenter is one of the heavy hitters in horror. Some people call him the master of horror. I mean, it's just a great movie. And Roddy Piper's performance in it, like, he was such a badass, and he's so charismatic, and he was so good in this movie. And he had one of the greatest lines of all time in this. Do you know what I'm going to say, Liam?
I cannot. You're gonna have to remind me because my mind's gone a little bit blank.
He comes into the building. He's got a shotgun in his hand. He's ready to mess some people up. And he's like, I'm here to kick ass and chew bubble gum. And I'm all out of bubble gum. That's just iconic. I absolutely love that. That line is so cool, and that's always going to stick in my head.
That is brilliant. I remember the actual scene now. I just could not remember exactly what he said. My mind went a little bit blank.
That is like an iconic classic quote. Yeah, love that. Love it. Moving on here. This next one that I'm going to talk about, this is my all-time favorite horror film. So I hope I don't spend too much time talking about it here, but I absolutely adore this movie. It is a Rob Zombie film, and it is the sequel to his original film, House of a Thousand Corpses. That is The Devil's Rejects. Now, I have met two of the three people that are in this image. The two
Which two?
guys here, Bill Moseley, who played Otis Driftwood, and Sid Haig, the late Sid Haig, he passed away a couple years ago, who played the evil clown Captain Spaulding in this. I got their autographs. I got pictures with them. I absolutely love this film. It's dark. It's gritty. It's dirty. It's got funny moments in it. It's got serious moments in it. It's got a lot of tension, a lot of gore. I mean, this is a horror movie fan's delight, in my opinion. I know it's controversial because all Rob Zombie films are, but I personally love this. Now, the reason why this is on this particular list is because there are a couple of henchmen in this that the sheriff secretly hires to try to take out this family of killers as revenge, because he wants revenge because his brother, the sheriff, was killed in House of a Thousand Corpses. So he wants revenge. He doesn't want these guys arrested. He wants them dead. And he hires a couple of thugs. One of them is played by Danny Trejo, who you see everywhere in B-list horror cinema. The other's this guy, one Diamond Dallas Page, who has a small part in this movie playing one of these henchmen. Now, what's interesting about this is that there was another pro wrestler who was also in the running for this role who auditioned for it. Are you aware of this, Liam?
I'm going to be truthfully honest with you. This is the only movie on the list I'm not actually familiar with.
Yeah, so Chris Jericho actually auditioned for the role that went to DDP. So, like, it almost was Chris Jericho in this, but it ended up being Diamond Dallas Page instead. But, yeah, for anybody who hasn't seen this, if you like dark, kind of story-driven horror, I would highly recommend you check this one out because, like I said, this is my favorite horror film of all time, and I absolutely love it. So, Liam, you haven't seen this one?
This is the only one, obviously, on the list I've not actually seen. I'm going to be truthfully honest.
Yeah, we got to get you to see this one because I'm curious to see what you think. Just a kind of a little synopsis here. There's like a murderous family. The House of a Thousand Corpses was kind of like a tribute, kind of an homage by Rob Zombie to the classic Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got like this family, this backwoods country family that lives out in the middle of nowhere in a gigantic house. And, you know, a group of stupid kids go wandering and get lost there, and then they get lured in, and you can kind of piece together what happens after that. All kinds of sadism and crazy shit happens. But The Devil's Rejects is when the police finally catch on to them, and they raid their house, and they make a harrowing escape. And the whole film is basically the cops trying to track these people down and kill them. So, I mean, it's a fascinating film. It kind of makes the villains the ones that are being chased and the cops kind of the killers. But it's fascinating. I'd recommend checking it out.
Of course. So the only Rob Zombie film obviously I've seen and I know pretty well is the Halloween version. Or do you know his version?
Yeah. And, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that because there's a wrestler in that too. He's not very well known, but Tyler Mane, the guy who played Michael Myers in Halloween 1 and 2. He was also in The Devil's Rejects. He has a character in that. But Tyler Mane apparently used to be like a low-level preliminary WCW wrestler back in like the early to mid 90s. So
Interesting. Which
yeah.
part does he play in the movie? Because I'm trying to think.
In Halloween 1 and 2, he's Michael Myers.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big guy. He's like a big, hulking, very tall, muscular dude. He played Michael Myers in those two movies. Yeah.
Damn. The reason I brought that one up is because I do like this. Rob obviously told the story, Joey Michael, in that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I liked him too. I mean, I like the first one a lot. The second one kind of went a little off the rails for me. I didn't really care much for what Rob Zombie did with the second one. I thought it was a decent slasher movie,
mm-hmm.
and I think it deviated a little too much from what Michael Myers was. But the first Halloween movie that Rob Zombie did, I thought was great. I thought it was really good. It was dark. It was brutal. It told the story of Michael Myers, kind of humanized him a little bit, which made it a little more impactful emotionally. Yeah, I'm a fan of Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Yep, definitely up there. So, next up movie.
This next one, this is a recent entry, and this is a very good movie. I actually watched this for the first time yesterday. Like, I hadn't seen it, and I wanted to see it because I wanted to put it on my list. And it is Batista's Knock at the Cabin by M. Night Shyamalan. Now, Liam, have you seen this one?
I have. I've only recently seen it, but one thing I like about this movie is Batista plays his part really, really well in this.
So I'm going to go ahead and make a statement here. And I don't know if anybody's going to think this is controversial or not, but Batista's movies are so much better than The Rock's movies.
I mean, yeah, you could make that exception. Guardians of the Galaxy is probably another movie which is next on this list as well. So yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
I think Batista's movies are better than The Rock's movies. I really do. I think most of The Rock's movies kind of suck. I think as an actor, I think The Rock could be better, but I mean, Batista's performance in this movie is awesome. Like, he is so good at this. But just to kind of tell everybody what this is about, Batista and 3 other random people from around the planet apparently started getting these really intense visions about Armageddon and the end of the world. And they were all told by these visions to meet up with each other, go to this random cabin out in the woods where this gay couple and their adopted daughter live. And without giving too much of the plot away, they kind of did a home invasion spot where they come in on them, but they tell them that one of them has to be sacrificed to save the planet from a global apocalypse. It is a wild, wild movie. It's a very interesting concept. Batista is brilliant in this. Like, he plays like of course he's this big hulked up muscular guy, but he plays like a 2nd grade school teacher who's like very uncomfortable and very upset by having to be the guy who's like forcing this poor couple to make a choice that they shouldn't have to make to save the planet. It's just very intense. You could cut the tension with a knife throughout this movie. I thought it was very well done. What else do you have to say about this one, Liam?
I think you're right. I think the one thing I like about this is you got to see a different side of Batista, because I was always used to him doing the action type movies, and to see him in this role as a whole, I thought he played it absolutely spectacular. I don't obviously give spoilers away because we don't want to do this, but yeah, it's probably one of the coolest movies I've seen.
Yeah, and this is a pretty recent movie, so I'm not going to spoil it any further than that. But I watched this one on Prime Video here in the U.S., and I watched this one yesterday. And if you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend it because it's really, really good. But sticking with Batista here, I got another entry. Batista has another horror film, and I think this is really damn good too. I actually watched this for the first time this morning, and that is Netflix's Army of the Dead. Now, this is a very interesting concept. I love zombies. I love it. This movie was directed by Zack Snyder, who, of course, Zack Snyder's mostly known as the guy who made the DC universe. But he also, in 2004, made a remake of the old George Romero classic. George Romero kind of being the father of all zombie cinema. A remake of his film Dawn of the Dead. And
Good movie.
Dawn of the Dead is great. I think we talked about that before. It was like, I'm thinking you or somebody told me that was one of your favorite horror films. But yeah, that was a great movie that he did. He did a fantastic job with it. And apparently he had kicked around the idea of making what he considered kind of the spiritual successor to that film. And that eventually became Army of the Dead. That came out on Netflix a couple years ago. And Batista's in it. And he's the main star. The concept of it is that there is a zombie that is being transported by the U.S. military from Area 51 in the middle of the night where nobody can see. And this young couple that just got married in Vegas get a little irresponsible when they're driving and end up crossing the road, crossing the median, slamming into this military convoy, thus releasing a zombie out into the wild. So, fast forward a few years, Las Vegas has completely been taken over by zombies, and it has been quarantined off by the US government. So, it's all contained within Las Vegas. The rest of the world is okay. And there's like a big businessman who visits Batista's character, who's like a former special ops guy who's working in a burger place flipping burgers, and makes him an offer. Says, look, I have $250 million in a vault in a casino in Vegas. The insurance company has already reimbursed me for that amount of money, but that money is sitting there. It can't be traced, and I want that money. So I would like you to assemble a team, go into Vegas, grab that money, extract out, and I'll split it with you. So that's kind of the concept of the film. They got to go into Vegas where all the zombies are. They got to get the money, and they got to get out. Now, obviously, it gets a lot hairier for them than that. There's a zombie tiger in this movie, which is badass. I mean, this is a really, really good movie. It's long. It's 2.5 hours, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. And I thought Batista was great in it. What did you think of this, Liam?
Yeah, this is like your typical, like, zombie survival movie thing. And when you said there, like, you basically collect my money. I can't do it myself. You've got to collect it, but I'll split it with you. It's like, okay, so we're doing your dirty work, essentially.
Yeah. I think he told him, if you give me my $250 million, I'll give you the 50 and you can split it among you and your crew. So they decide to go through with it and give it a shot. And I won't give away any more of the plot than that for anyone who hasn't seen it, but it does take some twists and turns. There's a lot of good action in this. It kind of reminded me of the video game Fallout New Vegas. It's like there's like a post-apocalyptic Las Vegas that you see them going through and trying to get this money. I thought this was fantastic. Great action, great storytelling. It's shot really well. I liked it.
Yeah. Now, this next one on this list, I know very, very well because I remember doing so much research for this one.
Now, this one, all right, I'm going to be upfront with you guys here. There is a wrestler in this one, but it's a very, very small role. But I, the effing expert, wanted an excuse to talk about this movie because I think it's fantastic. And that is Art the Clown in Terrifier 2.
What an image, by the way.
Yes, Art the Clown is like, he's terrifying looking, no pun intended. For anybody who hasn't seen the Terrifier movies, and if you're not a hardcore horror aficionado, you probably haven't seen them. But if you can stomach like very high levels of over the top gore with practical effects, check out the Terrifier films. It's like a throwback to those 1980s campy slasher films with a lot more over the top gore and violence in it. If you've got a dark sense of humor, it'll definitely tickle your funny bone, that's for sure. But Terrifier 2, in my opinion, is vastly superior to the first one. The first one didn't really have a whole lot of a story to it. And it was really fun too. But Terrifier 2 really kind of opened it up and added some new characters in it, some new storytelling, a little backstory of the killer, Art the Clown. But it's just a very over-the-top, gory slasher film. If you can stomach it, watch it. If you can't stomach it, don't, because it's really gross. I mean, there's feces in it, there's blood, there's I don't even know how else to describe it. Liam, how would you describe Terrifier 2?
Imagine a typical horror film and multiply it by 10. Yeah, the thing is with this is I remember reading all the reviews about it saying, warning, Terrifier 2 is the most sickening horror film. And I thought, you know what? Let's watch it for myself, shall we? Let's see what the whole thing about it. And I remember watching the movie and I'm going, okay. Now,
People
this-
literally left the horror, literally left theaters vomiting. Like that was like a legit story that had been reported. And yeah, if your movie can make people physically vomit in the theater, you're doing something right with cinematography. Yeah.
yeah, and the thing is, if we say the bedroom scene, it's the most talked about scene in a wrestling thing because I remember watching that going, ouch.
Think about it like this for anybody who hasn't seen it. You know that the old expression salt on wounds? Yeah.
Yep.
So watch the bedroom scene in Terrifier 2, and I think it kind of takes that to a new extreme.
Yes, it does. Now,
Here's the part that ties it to wrestling, okay? Is there's a scene kind of towards the end of the film, and I'm not going to reveal what happens at the end of the film, but there's a little post-credits scene that takes place in a mental institution. And there's a familiar face that you see kind of working the counter of this particular hospital. And it's this guy right here,
Chris Jericho.
Le Champion himself, Chris Jericho, makes a very small appearance in this film. But it warranted putting on the list because, I mean, Jericho's a huge star. Still, he's one of the biggest stars in wrestling. So for him to be in this movie, even in a small cameo role, I think was worthy enough to talk about here.
No, you just wanted an excuse to talk about Terrifier 2. Don't give me that.
I did.
But yeah, it's out of all the movies on this list, this is the one where it's like I would say you've got to have a strong stomach.
This one is one that if you just dabble in horror, it might not be for you. Like, you got to be a fan. Like, you got to be a fan enough to wear a Halloween t-shirt. Like, if you're not like a super fan of horror, I don't know. Terrifier might not be for you. Like, I think if I was going on a date with a woman for the first time, I don't think I would take her to see Terrifier.
Yeah, no. And apparently they're doing a Terrifier 3.
Yes. They actually just released this week that Terrifier 3 is apparently going to take place at Christmas.
All right, so we're going to ruin like fucking Christmas now, are we?
So we're going to ruin Christmas. Like Art the Clown's going to torture Santa Claus or, something like that. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, right? Obviously, I've got a little question for this. What do you think makes art different to, say, It? Because obviously that's the concept near enough.
Well, art doesn't really do magic. So, like, Pennywise does magic. Art kind of can come into your dreams, kind of like Freddy Krueger. But he's ultimately a slasher killer. He wants to chase you down. He wants to stab you. Like that. That's what he does. He's not like Pennywise is all about magic. Art is a slasher killer. Now, what were you going to say there, Liam?
I mean, when you said like the magic power things, I mean, I do know that the concept is that he keeps his victims alive as he's killing them.
Yeah.
So that's what we meant by the other power type thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of just like a sadistic way to like extend out killing them. But yeah, Terrifier is definitely worth a viewing if you haven't seen it and you can stomach it. That's for sure.
There you go. That's
Moving on here. We're getting into the absurd here on the next couple, but I think this is pretty funny. I've seen this one. I watched this one probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I watched it again this morning just to kind of get a refresher and kind of a feel of it. And it's this movie right here, Enter Zombie King. Now you can tell by the cover art there that this is a luchador. So this movie essentially is about domesticated zombies. Apparently there are zombies that are domesticated like house cats and dogs that are being used for evil by an evil luchador who wants to take over the planet. So he's got like a bunch of zombie henchmen that he's sending out to try to bite people and make more zombies, and he wants to grow a zombie army and take over the world. And the only person who can stop him is another luchador, a hero luchador, who uses pro wrestling moves to dismember zombies. The reason why I put this on here, for one thing, we'll get back to the overall lucha libre concept here, but one Jim the Anvil Neidhart, the late Jim Neidhart, is actually in this movie as a police officer. This came out in 2003. It's not a very good movie. I mean, I would say it's worth a viewing just because it's so campy and stupid and over the top. But it gets into a lot of the the lore of lucha libre. There's a lot of lucha libre moves. Half the characters wear masks at all times, no matter what they're doing. And there's like scenes in it where a rival luchador to the hero brings domesticated zombies dressed up as wrestlers in a U-Haul and goes around to various bars and performs wrestling matches with them. And they actually bump for him. So he's got zombies that bump for him in the ring, and they work matches together. So they think that this guy is the one who caused the outbreak of zombies killing people, but it ends up being this guy called the Zombie King, who's just an evil luchador. No further backstory than that. It's just an evil luchador. And they have a pro wrestling style feud between the good guy luchador and the evil luchador. And a lot of zombies get beheaded with pro wrestling moves. Liam, what do you think of this?
I think the best way I could describe this is it's like a cinematic wrestling match.
Kind of. Yeah.
That's the only way I can really describe it. But yeah, the concept of this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I just remember watching it and going, what the hell am I watching? But it's one of those where you've just got to watch it just to see how absurd it is.
God, the acting is probably the worst acting I've ever seen in a movie.
I think the budget has definitely got to be low.
Yeah. So the early 2000s was kind of when there kind of started to become a boom of like independent, kind of crappy, straight to DVD horror, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this was a thing that really kind of took off around this time in like the early 2000s. So you can find tons of just really shitty, bad B-list horror films out there on various streaming sites, a lot of which are on Tubi. That's where I found this one, which is a free streaming site. And this is one of them. It looks like shit. Like everything looks blue, which I think that a lot of people thought that the zombie aesthetic had to be blue and greenish. So there's a blue tint to everything on the screen. The acting is atrocious. I did think it was funny when the human luchadors would fight each other. It literally looked like a lucha match. They were doing like tornado DDTs and snap mares. And
that's kind of why I said the concept of like a cinematic match.
It was, yeah. It was kind of like a bad Lucha Underground episode. It's kind of what it was like. I think if you're a wrestling fan and you like zombies, check it out once. You probably won't ever want to watch it again, but watch it one time.
Yeah. This next one's really brilliant.
Now, the next one, I'm going to throw out a disclaimer here. I have not actually seen this movie, and I'm meant to get around to watching it this week, and I just didn't. But we can kind of just talk about the concept of it, and it kind of relates to what we just talked about. There's a movie that came out about a decade ago, Pro Wrestlers versus Zombies. You could see Matt Hardy, Kurt Angle, Roddy Piper, Shane Douglas, and I can't make out who that other guy is. Do you know who the other guy is there, Liam?
I do not, unless I'd have to look this up.
I don't know. It may just be a generic stand-in actor. I don't know. This is apparently a movie that came out about a decade ago about a zombie apocalypse, and the zombies end up fighting pro wrestlers. I've been wanting to see this for years, and I just never got around to sitting down and watching it because it's just fascinating. You've got all these guys. They're all going to team up. They're going to fight zombies. Kind of similar to the Enter Zombie King that we just talked about, but I would assume this is probably better since it actually has
Pardon the,
listeners.
interruption, but that is Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I can see that. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Wow. This is just this. I've got to see this because I'm sure this sucks. I'm sure it's absolutely terrible, but it's got to at least be a good time with all these actual wrestlers in it. Liam, what do you think of this?
So I've seen some clips of this, obviously, before we came on the air, and I will be honest, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's brilliant, and you'll not be disappointed. Trust me.
If there's one thing that you can never have too many of, it's campy B-list zombie movies. Because I mean, there's like dozens and dozens and dozens out there, and they all suck, but they're all entertaining in their own goofy little way. So yeah, I'm gonna check this one out. And like I said, I was trying to find this one for years, but this was never on a streaming service. But I think it might actually be out there on one of them now. I gotta look and see. But we'll move on back to an actual good movie. This is the last one on the list, and it's kind of a two-parter because this one did actually have a sequel to it, and this one kind of developed a bit of a cult following. There's a lot of people that are fans of this movie, and it is See No Evil and See No Evil 2 featuring Kane. Now, this features Kane playing a slasher villain named Jacob Goodnight, and this is actually a pretty well done slasher film. Like it got good reviews. People were really into it. I think Kane is a very realistic looking slasher villain. You know, this is when he was mask off Kane. He had the contact lenses in and the bald head. But like he looked so menacing in this. Like I thought that he was a great slasher villain, and he really was able to kind of translate the Kane character into this Jacob Goodnight character on screen here. And I really enjoyed these two movies. The second one had Scream Queen Danielle Harris, who's like in a ton of like really good kind of B-list horror films, who I've met as well. She's an absolute sweetheart. So yeah, I mean, I thought these were good movies. What did you think about the See No Evil films and Kane as a villain?
I think the thing is, obviously, the Kane, because you're right, it's bringing Kane's character to an actual movie, and I think the way, I'm not like knocking him, but the way he looks, the way he portrayed, I couldn't see anybody else playing this actual part for overall. I feel like this was well done, a great movie. I've not seen the second one, I've seen the first one, but yeah, I mean, for me, solid movie.
Yeah, I do think the first one was better than the second one. But I did like the second one though, because I am a fan of Danielle Harris. So I was glad to see her in that. But yeah, Kane is absolutely brutal in these two films. And I mean, he just looks like a killer. And I mean, I'm like you, I'm not bashing the guy's looks or anything, but with the bald head and him being 7 foot tall and the contact lenses and they made his teeth look all messed up and brown, black looking. He looked scary AF. Like he did. He really played a convincing role of a slasher villain. And I think if you haven't seen these two films, you should check them out because they're good. The first one's really good. Second one's pretty good too, but I'd recommend checking them both out.
Yeah, absolutely. And a great movie to end on. Do you know what I mean? It's a solid movie. And to be fair, I know we've knocked some of these movies, but some of them are really, really good. I feel like some of these don't get the love that they deserve.
Absolutely. I mean, like Girl on the Third Floor, I saw a lot of people trash that. I thought it was really good. I thought Punk was a really good actor in it. I think if you haven't seen that, give it a shot. Like I said, Dave Bautista, his acting work is just through the roof. And the two movies that we talked about here, Knock at the Cabin and Army of the Dead, those are both great horror films. They really are. Like, check them out because, Bautista's like killing it as an actor. He's a lot more than just Drax on Guardians of the Galaxy. And these two movies prove that. And They Live, absolute classic. Devil's Rejects, my favorite horror film of all time. Yeah, you guys need to check these movies out if you haven't. They're a lot of fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. And guys, that's our show. I mean, we're over an hour. I mean, Mr. Isaacs, have you had fun? Obviously, talking about something you love.
Oh, absolutely. Like obviously I love talking about wrestling, but if you can get me into one of my other passions that I don't get to talk about that often, um, it's that's exciting and entertaining to me. So I've had a good time tonight, and when I was on Paranormal a week or so ago talking about these horror films, it's a passion of mine, and it's been fun. It's been a good episode.
It has. And of course, if you guys obviously want to follow us on social media, you can head to prowrestlingtees.com/effing wrestling. As always, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube. Mr. Rises is always on Twitch. Are you doing some twitching this week?
Yes. Since I'm going to be here alone, I'm not going to have the kids here. I'm probably going to do some Twitch streams. Yeah. I don't know if I'll do one tonight or not, because I'm probably going to, be on Collision After Dark, but, probably dispersed through the week. I plan on doing some streaming. There's a Call of Duty event called The Haunting, where there's a lot of like zombie based versions of their online games. I'll probably be doing that some this week.
Absolutely, of course. And if you guys want a t-shirt, you can head to prowrestlingtees.com/effing wrestling. You can get the new Magic of Wrestling t-shirt, which I will be ordering very, very soon. Or you can get the All Different Wrestling shirt, which was modeled by the good friend of the show, Natalia Markova. Mr. Isaac, tell everyone about the old school.
If you like old school wrestling, and I know you do, you can go to prowrestlingtees.com/Adrian Adonis, who has been on a recent episode of the Vice documentary series Dark Side of the Ring. The adorable Adrian Adonis. Go get your t-shirt today.
Awesome. So, obviously, we've got lined up for the rest of the week. Collision After Dark later, I presume?
Yes, Collision After Dark will be on tonight at the usual time, about 10-ish Eastern time, depending on how long Collision runs over. Usually about 12:05 or 10:05 to 10:10 Eastern Standard Time. We're on the air. Come check us out. It's usually me, Canada Dry, and Joe Graham. We do the threesome thing every Saturday night. Come check us out.
Of course. And of course, the All Different Wrestling show is on tomorrow. They are doing, it's called Stick a Fork in Me, I'm Done. I don't know anything about that.
I'm going to be on this episode, and I helped Canada Dry come up with the concept of it. So,
okay.
We should have a good time. It's going to be wrestlers who used to be in WWE or used to be in AEW, whether or not they're going to ever end up back in WWE or AEW again. So we've got a decent list of people who were there at one point and that are still active in the wrestling business, and whether or not we ever think they'll be back.
Interesting. I actually can't wait for that. And what we're doing next week, let's have a look at my calendar. So next week we are doing, this is interesting because we spoke a lot about Impact this week. Next week we're doing the highs and lows of Impact Wrestling.
Nice. TNA/Impact Wrestling. That's going to be a good one, because there's a lot to unpack and talk about in regards to TNA's history.
Absolutely. So one final thing, Mr. Isaac, see us out to the outro.
Guys, we've all got things in this life that kind of get us down, whether it's financial, whether it's relationships, whether it's friendships that have gone south for some reason. If you're having money problems, you're having health problems, you got a relative that's got health problems. What is very important for you to do is you've got to stay in the right mindset. You've got to tell yourself that you can do this. You can overcome. You can overtake any obstacle that you have in your life of any of those things. If your relationship goes south, the hell with it. Move on. You can find somebody better, or you could just have fun on your own. Hit the gym, lift weights, watch TV, go out and hang out with somebody. Find some way to enrich your life and make it better. Spend time with your children. Work harder at your job. See if you can make some more money. Work on your health. You can do something to make your situation better, even when it sucks. And that's one thing that you've all got to remember. I believe in you. Liam believes in you. Everybody here at Effin Wrestling believes in you. You've got to remember to just put your fist in the air and just keep fighting.